We are back on the business end, and we're getting really close to the announcement of the Nations League rosters. Everyone's waiting with bated breath. So we're trying to get all the intel possible here. And to help me with that is a man who's been on the podcast before, Brian Sciaretta, who was with America's Soccer Now. And we Brian, I think we have to roll up our sleeves. And there's a lot at play here, not just for that roster, but
Yeah.
again, setting the table for the rest of 2024.
Yeah, indeed. It's this and then the Olympic team, they'll merge the player pools after the summer. But yeah, it's an interesting pool. I think there's some positions are more set than others. And I think it's like there's definitely a lot to unpack and talk about, and there's some absences that might disappoint people and some that people might find reasonable. And
Ooh.
but overall, I think, if you and I were to give our best guess of it, well, we'd probably get 90 to 95% of the roster right.
I think so. And there's those one things about, is there going to be a third forward? Can one of those forwards play out wide? How many fullbacks do you bring in because of the Serginho Dest suspension in the first game? Very interesting. But there's one, I think, Gio Reyna, and there is some reports that he may be going to be on the Olympic roster, which would take him out of the Nations League roster. Because as you pointed out to me, Greg Berhalter has said you have the Nations League moving to the Copa, and then the Olympics roster. And those are going to be two unique,
Very different teams. Yeah.
two different teams, and they will kind of come together on the back end of the summer of 2024. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's historically how it's been done, and I think it'll be done in terms of providing a lot more competition to the player pool that's needed. There's some players that are mainstay call-ups, but they're just it's a little bit of a stagnant pool. So there's not much changes, but I'd be very surprised to see Gio on the Olympic roster. I think it's just you don't even know what club he's at. And the big thing with the Olympics, obviously, is releases are non-mandatory. So you don't even know what club you're dealing with at this
That would
point with
be,
Gio.
yeah,
So
that's a good
we,
point. Well, and I don't
I
think
mean,
so.
who do you
And
call to start talking with his coach for the fall?
and I don't think so. And I said reports. They're not reports. Maybe they're just some sort of
It's
opinions,
speculation. It's fun. I mean,
speculation.
and I get why he would be on the list. That roster's small. It's only 18 people. They might expand it like they did, but closer to the tournament. But as of now, it's 18 people and three overagers. So you know, it's a it's a it's a small team, but a good team, and I think one that definitely could provide some national team competition in some key areas. So again, like I think I'm more interested with this Nation League in terms of the strikers. Sure, a lot of people are some of the reserve wingers. I think the central, I think a lot of the other positions, we have a good idea of maybe not who starts in every episode, every game, but in terms of who will be there. Um, these rosters do kind of pick themselves.
Well, I would agree. I think there's going to be a couple positions where people have some strife, but even the last
Of
few
course,
rosters
yeah,
for Greg Berhalter, I think were pretty straightforward, and most people would agree with the guys that have
yeah.
been on there. I did want to ask you about Gio because there was a quote that came out about from Greg Berhalter, who let me pull this up. He goes, "We know Gio is a creative player. We know he's a great player for the final pass. We have to see what he can do in terms of workload, how long." He could last in the field because he hasn't been playing, but we'll also see other options as well. So let me break that down. I think Gio should start even well maybe a week ago. I was saying I think he should start because of what he did in October and in the previous camp, even going back to the last Nations League where he showed he was a critical player where you put him in ink. Now, hearing Greg Berhalter say that gives me pause. I think Greg Berhalter wants to play him, but at some point, we could say you don't have to be starting, but even Gio may not be training. He didn't play the last game for Nottingham.
No,
What kind of shape? I don't think he's
Max, it's a
definitely not
great
a 90-minute
question.
player.
Well, Max, listen, he's going to finish this year with all likelihood. This is going to be his third straight year where he doesn't even hit 1,000 minutes. All
Oof.
right. I mean, like I mean, no person, no national team coach, I don't care if it's Greg or they have Pep Guardiola. No one's going to commit to starting someone who doesn't exhibit that kind of workload. What's one thing to do it for a friendly when you get six substitutions and you can kind of manage everything and everything's toned down. But in games you have to win that are competitive. you know, if you start him, you're looking at like, okay, well then now we're locked into a substitution in the 60th minute. You know, you may or may not want to do that. And then look, it's a competitive thing, right? He's not just the guys he's competing against for minutes aren't nobodies either. Like, I mean, Malik Tillman's out there doing it every week, and that's probably his toughest competition. You know, Musa's not. You know, that's another one where you might want to say, okay, like, can he start and go 90 minutes both games coming up? I mean, he didn't play the last game just as a coach's choice. You know, and you know, obviously Cardozo's in a much better spot. You know, there's all kinds of, and we'll see what Weston's back training. You know, and he's in good shape. But like, there's always these questions. You can't really, you know, why on earth would you want to be saying like we have to start this player, you know, when he's not starting this much? It's like I don't, and especially for CONCACAF games too. The U.S. shouldn't feel this much pressure to have to start Gio, and I think it'd be wrong if Gio expects to be a starter, just walk right into the starting lineup. You know,
Yo, where's my gig? I know he wouldn't
yeah.
say.
I mean,
I think
it's not his.
he would be timid at this point without
Yeah.
the.
I like again. I don't think any coach. You know, look, maybe he goes into training. He comes in the first couple of days and kills it, and then they give him, you know, physical testing, he passes him flying colors. Okay, then you start him, but like that's not stuff. So you can't really say this like several weeks out before camp even starts. It's just not that. You just have to be a little bit of reality check is needed to understand like just how little he's played in over, you know, now for his third season.
I think with Malik Tillman, you certainly have a guy who could slot in there who has been playing very well, and that makes
Right.
sense now. I would have put Gio Reyna into that starting position if he had, even if he played 15, 20 minutes and I knew he was training, but now he's not playing games and now he's not making benches because of an injury that's kind of kept him out. And then I'm like, seems like a big headache, and maybe a way to get one less headache is to put Malik Tillman,
Yeah,
or you can figure something around Weston McKennie, who you
Gio will
said
be
is
on the
back from his
team.
dislocated shoulder.
Gio's going to be on the team. He's going to play. But you know, like again, it's like there aren't many people on the national team that you say you have to start. Like, you know, Anthony Robinson's one and stuff like that. But like, and Christian Pulisic, obviously, and you know, but like aside from that, you know, everyone has to kind of earn it. And Gio's not at that Pulisic, Anthony Robinson level where like you just say, okay, he's here, he's going to start.
Tim Weah is going to make this roster, correct? Even though it's been startling over the last few weeks how his role has diminished a bit. But I mean, he seems like, I mean, he is a lock starter. He's like one of five guys you lock in as a starter. But then,
Yeah.
and I don't think that changes, but it's some consideration here for Greg Berhalter, not only if someone else plays for Weah, but how do you bring in the additional wingers or forwards to this 23-man roster?
Look, I mean, you could start a midfield, right? Of Musa, McKennie, Cardozo. You could have Tillman then out wide. Then you could put, you know, because you don't have Dest that first game, Weah could play right back. It kind of solves a little, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if they, you know, because Joe Scally's not playing right now, and you know, there's that problem there because Stefan Leiner's now healthy at Mönchengladbach. He was the guy who had cancer. I think it was gonna, you know, Scally started a lot more in the first half of the season because of that, and you know, thank God Liner's okay. But you know, it's like, are the minutes going to be there for him? And you know, it's so you know, a lot of these guys are sometimes and that's okay because these guys are, you know, like like I said, these guys are at big clubs. But you know, I said like, you know, what happens if they want to put, you know, I think I always think in long term they're going to try to do the three in the back and then with wing backs, you know, and then that would
Oh,
make
really? You
Way
think that's
really bad.
as a more
Not necessarily.
permanent
Not
look, or
at
just
some point,
horses for courses?
Yeah, at some point, Greg's going to want to do that. Now, maybe it's after the Copa America when you're just looking at a lot of friendlies coming up for the next 2 years. That's a good time. But like Way is just versatile. He starts for this team, but you know, again, it might not be. He might not be the like a if Scally's not playing, he might not be the bad backup for Dest at right back. You know, and that could then push pressure on Scally, and then Tillman could play wing or he could move in centrally. So there's a couple of these. There's a lot of different ways he could play it. I don't think he's short on options the way some people do.
Well, the fullback situation is really interesting because of the Serginho Dest situation. So you have Anthony Robinson at left back, and who you play at right back. Tim Weah seems like a great option. Who I mean, let me. Obviously, Dest is going to be there. So those, let's just say, let's not include Weah in that. So you do have Dest, you do have Anthony Robinson, and Joe Scally, even though he's not playing as much lately, is going to likely be there. How many fullbacks do you bring in without Tim Weah, and then we'll bring him into the equation? Is it four? Is it?
Yeah, I think you have your usual fullback situation with Robinson, and then Lund. I think Lund is a guy who might get pushed, might have some competition after the Olympics. There's some really good left backs on the younger side. And then right back, I think they'll bring Dest. He won't play the first game. And then Scally, and backing up Scally, then you can just always shift Weah back there. I don't
Yeah.
I, I don't think there's anything more. I don't think look, it's a 26 player roster. It's not a no, it's a 23 player roster. It's
23.
not 26 like there was at the World Cup. So I don't think you need to go too far beyond there.
So Dest, Scally, Robinson, and then Weah as your fourth. Maybe Lund gets in there. What about like a guy like
Lund will get
DeJuan
in there.
Jones who can play both, maybe on the outside
Yeah,
looking in?
Dewan's an interesting guy. I think it's certainly one that he could. Yeah, I think what they like with and he could push Lund too. The problem with Jones is he's a right-footed guy who plays mostly as a left back for New
Yeah.
England, and and I think Greg really wants the left-footed guys on the left side, and the right-footed guys on the right side. I mean, I think it doesn't. You can kind of see even though Dest plays left back sometimes for PSV, he's for the national team. He really doesn't play that well as a left back. He's so much better on the right. So I think look, eventually, I think after the Olympics, you have Caleb Wiley and John Tolkien, Jonathan Gomez, like a lot of good left backs. I think that competition opens up later in the year. Although Lund could maybe go down to the Olympic team, and then that maybe opens up the door for DeJuan Jones. It comes down to just how much Greg is willing to sacrifice, the left-footed thing on the left side. But again, Robinson's just a 90-minute like guy. He's a
What a
lock.
gift.
I mean, his good performances this year. For me, he was the best soccer player of the year. I had him in my. I mean, his good performances are like clockwork. You can but I do like
What a
Jones.
high praise that is, Brian, to say that.
Yeah,
That's just so consistent. It's like
yeah. I mean,
for a coach's dream.
The thing with Lund is it's just like he passes well. He's good mechanics, but like you go from such a different player with Robinson at left back. He's just a. I mean, not only has his passing gotten better, but he's just the how well he covers that end line endlessly, and the work rate is unbelievable. And then you kind of shift back to a completely different fullback with Lund. Jones, while the head doesn't have that left foot, at least he covers that sideline that offers more of a like for things, replacement, so you don't have a vast drastic stylistic difference, if that
Mhm.
makes any sense.
It does. It does. But it's
You don't want to have to change the way you play because you lose your starter.
right, and it's fascinating these fine margins as to what could get a
Yeah.
guy into the starting 11 or into the roster, just the way you use your feet, whatever it might be. So I was going to have DeJuan Jones in there, but I'm a little reluctant. I was just really I think the
It's in the
Weah
mix.
angle is very interesting to be that fourth guy and clear one less headache selection
And
wise for Berhalter.
I think Jones has played pretty well. I mean, so far to start the season, Lunda, it hasn't been that great lately over at Palermo. They've lost a lot of their promotion momentum. So and Lunda has the avenue with the Olympic eligibility too. So if somehow I saw him on the U23 roster and Jones there, I wouldn't be surprised. Sometimes you might want to go where you can play as opposed to just being you have your backups, and maybe you don't want to maybe if your backups can play at a U23 level, that's a better place for them. So I don't know. There's a lot of different ways they know who their starter is. It's just managing backups when you have youth national teams and eligibility for the backups is sometimes a tricky question.
Let's go to fullback to center back. This to me is the most interesting one.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm overselling it because Chris Richards playing regularly at Crystal Palace, playing well, scored a goal. He is the guy that we want to develop to hopefully be this modern center back that we never really see that frequently. I don't know if he's there. I don't know if he'll get
Yeah,
there, but he's the best we got. And I think
that's fair.
Richards and Ream not only not playing for Fulham, he's like, but being his age, you figure if he's finally hitting that wall, which he's
Yeah.
going to hit. I think I would say Ream Richards is a starter, but I'm not 100% on Ream. Whereas you need to start finding, maybe not for the Nations League, but eventually someone who can fill in there. The options, I think there's two. There's Cameron Carter-Vickers. There is Miles Robinson. And, as you can imagine, I talk about Miles Robinson. I think he's the guy because he's done well with the
Yeah.
national team. He passes relatively well, not at Ream's league. But I guess a lot of people wonder if he can make the roster. And I know we're forgetting some other people here that could certainly play.
Yeah,
John Brooks
McKenzie,
is on that
Trusty,
60 as well.
Zimmerman.
Man, Trusty had a harsh. I mean, it was
Yeah.
Arsenal, but
I
I
don't
go,
think Trusty's
I don't
I
think
know
he's
he plays
ready.
in the Premier League. I'd be surprised if he's on the roster. I mean, I think Ream is
Well,
going to be there because
how many
look, if
center
Ream's
backs do you think get brought in?
four.
Four. Okay.
I think Richards, if I'm guessing, I think Richards and Miles start. I think Miles still covers ground that
Yep.
I think you want, particularly in a CONCACAF game. Those games can get a little open, and you need some emergency defending, and you need some quicker play. Miles' record against Mexico is unbelievable.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't
you
know.
know,
The only drawback with him, and it is the people say he plays in MLS. I go, but everything else, he was a little
right.
spotty in 2022 when he was playing. You could see he didn't play the way he did in the Gold Cup year in Vegas. But there's
I think
enough of a body
if
of
you're an
work.
MLS and you're in your best 11, I mean, a league best 11 at the very
You would
top of these
think.
positions. I mean, I think, versus you take some fictitious guy like a go ahead Eagles, it's like I'm taking Miles, it's
Right. I mean, but see,
I
Carter
like
Vickers
how
too, but he's been injured, and then
he's been
Celtic.
in and out.
Yeah.
I don't think Celtic is, they I can't believe they dropped the loss to Hearts the other day. I think with Vickers, I think Miles has a little bit more quickness that Greg has always been drawn to.
Yes.
I wrote about this. I wrote a big feature about the center back pool, and it's been a horror show at the youth national team level because I follow it there. And because you haven't been pushing enough center backs at youth national team levels the last 5 years now into the senior team pool, you see the Olympic pool. It's a disaster. They have to use two overagers in center back. They have like no alternative. It's just been like the same national team's been like the same six guys, 6, 7 guys just kind of always in the pool. No one's really excelling. Someone has a good couple months and then they fade off, and it's no one has really taken the ball. Maybe Richards is now. We'll see. But yeah, I don't see. Ream is been great. He's aged better than any other player, but you always have to know where the exit doors are with
Yeah,
him.
he saved us at the
And
World Cup. Remember that no one had him on the
right,
roster until a few months earlier, and he saved us. But we all wait for it because Father Time, as they say.
yeah, he's undefeated. Yeah,
Yeah,
so yeah, I mean, I think, and he's also a good guy.
good guy in the.
if you
He's a good guy overall, but good guy in the locker room. Great to have as
oh,
your
he's
coach.
fantastic. So I think with him, it's like if you bring him in and he's not starting, he's not gonna bring the rest of the team down. Yeah, look, there's always options out there. Like, is he gonna bring John Brooks back in? And I don't see it.
But you know
Um,
what? Saying that the revival for Tim Ream there's a precedent there that maybe there
yeah,
could be a revival for a guy like John Brooks when there's a need. When there's a need, there
yeah.
might
When
be a
there's a
need.
need, and I think that they're gonna want to explore what they have right now. And I don't think Brooks is the kind of guy you bring unless you're gonna start him. I think if you have him, bring him in, put him on the bench, it's might not be optimal. So like I think Vickers will make it, Richards, Robinson,
And Ream.
and Ream, and then I think Walker is putting himself in a good position to be an overage guy for the
Yeah,
Olympics. And a guy I think is still in the mix very much is Mark McKenzie.
I
Up
hope
and down
so.
season. Yeah, it's an up and down season. He's kind of, I don't think anyone at Genk has had the season that they want, but he's pushing up for bigger and better things. Maybe he's another guy you think of as an overage guy for the Olympics. They have to use
It's
two of them.
but there's some alarm bells in what you said about the lack of players getting opportunities at center back, because to me, the identity of when the U.S. have been successful, and you go
Yeah.
back to the World Cup where they didn't give up goals, and you go back to the Gold Cup Nations League, where I mean the Nations League final with Mexico, probably an aberration, but getting a goal and that might be enough. Being a team that's tough to beat, so good
Yeah.
goalkeeping, good defending. Obviously, goalkeeping's not as steadfast as it was a year
No.
ago. We don't know who the two or the three are going to be. We know the one, and the one's not playing. And then what you said about the center back, I mean, that could be
Listen to
pretty
this.
alarming.
You want to hear an alarming stat? If you look at the U23 eligible, which is 2001 born and younger, and you look at how many guys are playing regularly at their clubs, and you include MLS, any first division in Europe, or the top second divisions that are under like the big four leagues over there. And there's three guys playing regularly. So
Uh-oh.
you got
No one's been
Jalen Neal,
talking
who's
about this.
hurt,
It's a
Jalen
little.
Neal, who's hurt, George Campbell in Montreal, and Maximilian Dietz at Gertha Fürth, in the second division, second Bundesliga. That's the extent of the U23 center back pool that plays regular, and that's a result because of they haven't been good in a number of years in center back. So that's why it's been very stagnant on the men's national team. Like there's no one really new entering in the pool. It's the same people we talk about window after window. No new face has been talked about in center back for a very long time. I mean, they tried to do Jalen Neal, but last year was only his first year, and he played something like 1,200 minutes before he got hurt in MLS with the Galaxy. So yeah, I mean he's promising, but I mean it's 1,200 minutes is not a national team player, career minutes. So it's just it's a big cause of concern. I think they're okay for the short-term future, but long-term they need people playing center back, and it's
Yeah.
it's it's actually really something people need to think about.
Yeah. Well, I think so. I mean, I like our chances when we're winning 1-0 as opposed to 3-2. Those are hard games to win. I don't know if we have the goals. I'd like to think so. And that said, I mean, there's a good segue there. It's like maybe we have to
Yeah,
outscore people. So we
I
look
think
at
I know
the
where we're going.
this has got to be pretty interesting again. Who makes the roster? And it's a big one because 23-man roster. They're going to bring two strikers, could bring in three, but then that would take away from the two wingers that you would bring. So four wingers total.
Yeah, I think with 23 people, you bring two at every
Attackers in
position
total
plus
six.
three goalies. That's
Yeah,
usually how you do it.
but
You take
forwards and
11.
wingers, you're probably bringing in six guys total as a group.
Yeah, between forwards and wingers, yeah, because you have a front three and you want to bring at least two of them. So yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
Now the one thing that has
And
come
you got a
up.
couple hybrid guys like Tillman who could play as a 10 or a wing, that exists a
That's
lot.
Malik Tillman again. It's like you talk about Anthony
Right.
Robinson being a gift. Malik
Hmm.
Tillman could be a gift. Tim Weah to a lesser degree because he's not having to go to
Yeah.
club season, but that versatility just opens up a lot of doors. So I think if Pulisic and Weah are still the guys, we'll keep Weah in there for argument's sake. He's been such a great performer for the national team. Then you have Balogun and Pepe. We'll maybe talk to see who you think could get the inside track as the starter. I'm a Balogun guy. I'll still be until I see proof that we can't go that direction. Then Sargent, who's been phenomenal, and then Haji Wright, who has scored. You can't bring both of them, I think, but the belief is maybe you can bring one as a wide
Yeah.
player, which they both are comfortable. So how do you see?
I'd take Vasquez over Haji, to be honest with you.
Oh, that's
But
another one, and he's tearing it up, and he's
right.
a different
And we
look.
don't even think about a guy like Jordan Peacock anymore. It's
I wish some of these
I
guys could
think
play center back, Brian.
yeah. Yeah, look, I think if you're talking pure form, right? Like, I mean, Sargent and Vasquez are the best informed guys. My opinion is that Vasquez is going to be thought of as this is just a guess on my part, no inside info, but I think Vasquez checks a lot of boxes to be an overage guy for the Olympics. Because they don't miss
I
any Liga MX games because
Yeah.
it overlaps completely with the League's Cup. And in terms of Sargent, the way I understand it is as well as he's played, and he's played extremely well, he's playing hurt. Like his ankle is still bothering him. He's playing through pain. And David Wagner kind of hinted at this last week in a press conference when he said like they're hoping to get to the international break when he can have some needed rest, because he's really straining himself on his ankle. And look, I think Sargent deserves to be on this roster in March, and then he deserves to be on the Copa America if he keeps it up. But if the reason to leave Sargent off is because his ankle needs rest and they're trying to push for promotion because they are a promotion contending team now
Mm.
in Norwich. And if not, then they're going to be certainly next year if they can get a full season out of them. Because that's the reason why they'd be almost automatically promoted if Sargent was healthy this whole year. So, if that's the reason why he's left off, I think everyone should be cool with that because it's
They won't
the
be.
big picture. They won't be, but in an
There will
ideal
be an
world,
uproar, even if Greg says this is why
the
we
people
kept him
I've
off.
muted on Twitter will be vastly disappointed
I
by
know.
Josh Sargent's absence.
But
But
look,
that being said,
those are really good reasons, Brian. Norwich is going to look at Greg and say, "We need this guy. We're
yeah,
trying to get
yeah,
in that top
and
six."
two managers who both played for the U.S. national team will be like, look, if you want to take him to the Copa, Wagner will be like, if you want to take him to the Copa America, go for it. But we're trying to get promoted here, and Josh is our best player. They've even said he's their best player right now, and like like his ankle's not great. So why would you want to put him out there in a U.S. Mexico game when you're with a guy with a trying to get through like a surgery in the middle of the season? I don't know. So I think it's going to be Balogun and Pepe. I think I don't think unless they see Haji as a guy who can go out wide, I don't think he fits really the winger that they want.
Right.
Maybe I could be wrong, but like
So no
I
Sergeant,
just
no
I
Haji.
don't I think Haji's just I don't think he's gonna be in line for many call-ups if everyone's healthy.
Yeah.
I just put it that
It's
way.
just the numbers game. So you get two traditional wingers. Could we say a guy like Kevin Paredes makes it, or
Yeah, Kevin's a guy who's he's in and out of the lineup at Wolfsburg. I mean, he already had one or two goals this year, a couple of assists, which aren't great numbers, but he's very promising. Again, he's Olympic eligible, but will Wolfsburg cooperate in the Olympics, next year? Maybe not. So then you just figure, okay, yeah, Paredes is certainly one I think that they could use out wide. Tillman's a guy Gio are guys who can cover out wide behind the Weah and Pulisic starters. The backup wingers aren't great, but look, and then who knows? Maybe there is a surprise pick in there somehow. But again, that backup winger positions are things you can really see change after the Olympics.
right?
Same thing with the backup
Well,
fullbacks.
well, let's go after. So let me, if I'm clear, we have Balogun, Pepe, Pulisic, Weah, four. So we're getting the backups. Sargent, for those reasons, is not going to make it. Haji Wright might get caught in the shuffle. Brandon Vasquez, Olympics. So maybe let's say Paredes, and then there's one more position. Was it Zendejas? Or I mean, Taylor Booth
Yeah, I
can't
mean,
come all
look,
the way back,
Zendejas
right?
has been doing well. I mean, he's a guy that's known guys like Pulisic for I mean, they were in residency together. There's so many guys like that. Like it could be Paredes and Zendejas. You know, those are kind of like makeshift guys until some of the younger guys grow up a little bit.
And that's a promising group on the horizon. These kids that are going to
Oh
come
yeah,
in.
look, I mean, you start looking at the Olympic. That's the funny thing is like the 10 and the wide positions are loaded at the Olympics. That's when you start looking at guys like Luna and Gutierrez and Taylor Booth and Paredes and you could just keep kind of going on and on. Bernard Kamungo, who's great, and Esmir
Yeah,
Bartarovich
love him.
is one of the best teenagers in America. He's maybe one of the best teenagers right now
Yeah, and
in the
Esmir's
game.
been great because he's they're playing him every game. I love an MLS because
They love
MLS.
him, and his left foot is sublime. He grew up like really in with a guy with a father. They escaped the Yugoslavian Civil War. Fled to Wisconsin of all places, and he just blossomed as a player. Yeah, I mean, and he'll be sold eventually before too long. But I mean, he's playing on the Olympic team up a cycle. I think he's like on a fast track as long as he doesn't go to Bosnia. So like again, those are guys that they're ways out there, but if you start thinking about how this thing is going to change once these youth cycles run out with the national team and then they all have to kind of merge. Yeah, I mean there are going to be options moving forward. That's the strength of the Olympic team. So I think I think they'll ride with like the known backups right now and the known team for the Nations League, and then look after the Copa America. remember, you're just dealing with friendlies for 2 years after the leading up to the World Cup, and a
Boring.
Gold Cup and another Nations League. That's when you're going to be able to experiment a lot more with some of these younger guys.
Real quickly, we said Esmir Bajraktarevic. He potentially could be going to. You said Bosnia as a Bosnian
Yeah,
international
their
player
U21
because of
coach
his.
has been talked
Okay,
about him
oh, of
publicly as
course,
a guy that they really
absolutely.
want.
So I mean, that's a
But
great
the
group.
U.S. has given him a lot of opportunities. I
I don't.
mean, he's playing. He's been capped.
Yes.
He's been a big part of the Olympic team. Marko Mitrovic, the U.S. Olympic coach, is Serbian. And Esmir has talked about how he's able to kind of relate with them. And then he's going to be at the U20 World Cup, and it's just there's just a lot there to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's credit to the
Well, we've had a
Revolution.
great
They
chance.
they found
The ones who have been dual nationals, the men's national teams had a great job of recruiting those guys on to
Yeah,
get
the
them to
ones
say
that they really want. Yeah, for
yes.
sure. I mean, Noel Buck is kind of is looks like he wants out, but but yeah, they're getting their pick of the litter, which is good.
Yeah. And like what's great about I mentioned MLS is, the Revs are playing Esmir and Real Salt Lake's been playing Diego Luna nonstop since the back end of last season.
Yeah,
So if these kids can play, and that's one of the benefits of MLS, if these kids can play, they will get in
yeah.
there.
And look at
A
a guy like
necessity
Bernard
for these clubs.
Kamungo. Like
Kamungo,
Bernard
yes.
Kamungo, I don't know how to rate, and I follow young players, but like here's a guy who played and he was born on a refugee camp, and he played with like makeshift soccer balls of like, and then it really wasn't until he got to the United States as a teenager for high school that he got to play organized soccer. So it's like, and now he's like a top player. He's a really good player for Dallas, and he's on the U23 team. But like, how do you rate a guy who didn't really grow up playing the game properly because of the circumstances? It's just it's it's funny, but again, I think that yeah, they're getting the opportunities to play. I think the league really changed. MLS changed for the better. They started introducing the academies, in '09 and through, and then really, I guess when that Tyler Adams, first you had Yedlin and Miazga, then you had the Adams, Tyler Adams, and Alfonso Davies group kind of come in, and then from there, it's just been a steady flow. You have Brendan Aronson, Mark McKenzie, just like there's always been a steady flow of young players playing. It wasn't really that way. That steady flow really didn't start till like 17, 16, 17. So that's really when I kind of consider the modern era of the league happening. And it's been a lot more friendly with selling players, developing players, playing them. It's been really beneficial for a lot of teams and the league and the national team and other national teams too.
I think we've been able to piece together a pretty decent roster, Brian. And to the listeners, this is why I bring Brian. He very level-headed and approach with this, and not picking favorites, just being commonsensical in many ways on why these
Yeah.
pieces fit into place. I know you said you're gonna be at the Paris Olympics, and
Yeah.
the value.
I'm
Look,
going to
I
be there
always
covering my first Olympic Games. It's going to be great. I like the team. I like the team, the direction the team is heading in, and I like Marco as a coach. I think he's done a good job so far. So look, they play France this window coming up, and they're going to learn their draw too. So and I think that this team is going to have some players who people aren't talking about in the scope of the national team, but they're going to be pushing players in the existing pool in the years ahead, which is what you need to say.
that
You
is.
always need people pushing.
Hey, Brian, I always poo-poo the Olympics. I go, I don't watch it because I don't. I mean, I sometimes look. We're gonna have to watch the Copa America, the Euros, and so much more. And I go, I know the Olympics, other than USA games, are gonna slip through the cracks for me. But that is enough reason to tune in for that reason, because this is a tournament we haven't been able to lean in. And as I was talking to you off air, where Greg Berhalter can build two unique groups and then merge them at the end to get the best possible team. That is a luxury we sorely missed and we really could use.
I mean, you go back and you look at like 2000, you had John O'Brien, Josh Wolf, and Landon Donovan, and then look at where they were 2 years later. And then in 2008, even though I said that team played well, even though they didn't get out of the group stage, it was a dumb error by Roscoe Fiscal, cost it. But like, look, you had Adu and Feelhaber and Davies and Holden and Kleshton, Altidore, Bradley. I mean, it was a team that really then had a lot of players then push the national team, push into the national team for the Confederations Cup and then the World Cup. It's a really important tool because it fills that gap between the U20s and the full national team very well. Gives them everyone another serious tournament to prepare for and get used to those. These international games are just different. So yeah, look, I think it's a good team, and I think there's some players to watch, and and look, Kylian Mbappe is apparently is going to put it in his contract wherever he signs that he gets released for the Olympics. So he's going to
So
play in
another
both.
reason to
So like
watch.
there's yeah, I mean Neymar
It's
did it
big
in
for these. It's big for
2016.
these athletes. You can tell.
Oh yeah,
The
especially for a
Argentine
host
and
country
Brazilian and
like that.
Mexican athletes in the past, they want to be on this. It's a lifetime
Oh
experience.
yeah, and with France hosting it, their
Yeah.
players want to be part of it. And I think League On teams will, will cooperate,
All right.
to send France a good team there. So it's going to be a big tournament.
All right. Well, not too much Beaujolais over there, okay, Brian? When you're over there, it's
Yeah.
Brian Sciaretta.